Okay, I think we're recording. Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Welcome back to Haunted Hearsay. Hi Caroline. It's good
Hi
to see you.
Ben, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. It's a bit cold here, but
In the
it,
capital city.
the
Have you got
capital
snow
city.
down there? Yeah.
Icy frost in the morning, and frost that doesn't go away as well.
Well, I'm up in the wilds of Donegal and we've had snow, sleet. The roads were like ice. Now it's pouring again. So yeah, the
Well,
wilds
a
of Donegal.
bit of everything.
Every season you can think of, we're getting it in the one day.
Yeah, I think we're kind of getting the same, but I managed to get out a few times, actually recently, and you might have seen one of them when I went over
Yes,
to
yes.
Donnybrook.
You went over
So
and you had your EMF thing.
yeah,
Yeah, you
so
got some results, did you?
yeah, so like as I've said before, we're not really experts on this. We're not ghost hunters. We don't really do this, but it was a bit of a gag and a bit of an experiment for us to see what would come up. So I went over, and it's I don't know if you saw it in the video, but basically it's like a walled garden.
Right, yeah.
There's no church left there. There would have been a church originally, but there's nothing
But
now. It's just the graveyard.
I know you've told me how old it is, but if you tell everyone else, that's like a
Yeah,
really,
it's
really old plot.
so allegedly it's from 800 AD
Wow.
originally, and it's been both Catholic burial grounds, it's been Protestant burial grounds, and it's been obviously pre-Christian burial ground as well. And the bodies that we're talking about really for this are Vikings. There it
Yes.
was a massacre of Vikings, so I should have really looked up the dates for the Vikings. But
Something
they
we don't need, tea time Saturday,
yeah,
circa
exactly.
800 AD.
Yeah, well
Something like
basically
that.
they ended up being dug out of the ground in 1877, so not that long ago.
Well, they weren't
Um
dug out at the same place. They were
no,
reinterred at the
yeah,
place
not
of
too far away though. So I presume it would have been one of the main or only or biggest or most well-known graveyards at the time, maybe. I'm not sure when the other graveyards in Donnybrook were built, but this is where they decided that they were going to put the bones of these 600 to 700 people that they found. So yeah, so I started off and I went down to just because it was closer. I went to the graveyard and I walked around the back of the graveyard. And the reading on the meter that I was getting was quite low, kind of 2 or 3. I'm not really sure what the scale is there. What it's obviously measuring electromagnetic fields, but what
Yeah,
measurement is it? I don't know. But
I know.
anyway, the
What's a
number,
good, what's a,
we'll just
yeah,
say it got up to about number 2 or number 3, which wasn't impressive at all. It said it has a light thing, kind of low, medium, and high, green, like a traffic light system.
yeah.
So it was low. Didn't pick up anything around the back. And I went for a good walk around, and then I like stood around for a while, see if anything changed, and nothing. So then, actually, the most interesting result of the day was when I went around to the front of the graveyard, and that got a reading of up to 30, which is like
Right, okay.
10,
That's a good spike then.
yeah, a really big spike. And I couldn't go into the graveyard. So this is just at the gate of the graveyard.
Can you
Um,
imagine what it'd be like if you got in
yeah, I'm sure we
closer?
can go back at some point when they're doing the tours again. But uh, well, that was fascinating anyway because it was a blatantly a big jump, and even any skeptic would have questioned sort of even why that was happening. So then I went down to where I read was the site of the actual massacre and where they found the bodies and the mass grave.
And who massacred them? You know that? Did you find that out?
Apparently, it was actually Vikings massacring Vikings.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't Irish people being massacred by Vikings or
Because,
like
yeah, I believe the
pre.
Vikings, anywhere they went, they succeeded at what they were doing. So you
Yeah, I
don't
think
hear many where they were defeated. Like,
I believe it was a tribal warfare kind of thing.
Well, for the Americans that might be listening, we know there's one or two. The reason that the Vikings, their Dublin was created, that was a settlement created by the Vikings.
Hmm.
So it would have had a big Viking influx, and they set up trade routes throughout the world from Dublin. So yeah, so it was the
Yeah.
Vikings really that founded Dublin.
Yeah, and the reason is the river. They were able to come up from the sea, and it
Yeah.
was a good location for a city. But so anyway, these guys get slaughtered, uh, buried in a hole essentially, and now that hole in the ground is a very expensive mansion that belongs to or is the residence of the German ambassador. So it's their house, not their embassy.
Oh,
Um,
right. Okay. So
yeah,
it's a private residence then.
private residence, and there was I didn't know that before I went, and there was a lot of cameras. Um, Cameras on the big gate, cameras on the small gate. I looked like an idiot walking up and down with my app, but I did it anyway. And I stood outside the gate with the app for a few moments, but I still managed to get a reading. I was a little bit disappointed, but when I looked back at the not the footage, but the app recording, I realized that actually the reading wasn't too bad. It was quite interesting in itself.
Yeah.
It got up to about 11 or 12. Um, and
I'd say there has to be something there. You can't dig up 700 or 800 bodies, build a
and
house on top of where they were. I mean, move the bodies, and there not to be any activity. There's bound to
exactly,
be. The difference between me and you is that I'd be cheeky enough to go up and knock on the door and say, "What's the chances of getting into it?" Not
yeah,
saying they'd let me, but I'd be cheeky enough to
to
do
try,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was. I couldn't get onto the land, I suppose, so I didn't bother. But I think I was able to get a reading anyway, and it was sort of 11 or 12, and the baseline reading was in that area was around 6. So like there seemed to
Okay.
be kind of activity in the area, but it went up, it kind of doubled. So in my video, I was like, "Oh, this is disappointing," but actually, it wasn't. It wasn't too disappointing. It was just not as dramatic as the graveyard. Um, but interesting
On hindsight. But
nonetheless.
well, that is so interesting. I
Yeah.
mean, I was talking to you about it whenever you had been there just afterwards, and saying how, there's various places. I wonder, does it affect people? Where the electromagnetic activity, where there's a lot of that, there's usually something like ley lines crossing
Hmm.
underneath. Now we know that the effects of that, be it man-made or natural electromagnetic activity, affect people. Same way the
Hmm.
moon affects people. There's just it affects your mood. Low atmospheric pressure affects your mood. Is it something that we'll understand more so, or is it means that there's like a thinner fabric, a thinner veil
Mm.
around ley lines and electromagnetic activity? God, that's a mouthful trying to get out every time. Um, is there more activity
A
because
cat.
of that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah,
actually, now that you say it, there's also a river down there.
yeah.
The
And we
River
know
Dodder
no
goes.
spirit travels. Yeah, whatever the
Yeah,
connection with the water. Yeah,
that's something you told me before. So
yeah.
there's definitely also millennia of history, basically,
Oh, yeah.
in the small, like we were saying, going back to the Vikings in this particular place, and then it was the Victorians that dug up the mass grave, and then there's like eons of history going on there in the settlements. So there's bound to be activity.
Dublin was a settlement. It wasn't known as Dublin now. It was a small settlement, and the
Mm,
Vikings came in, and it was an ideal hitching post, as it were, for sea voyages. I mean,
yeah.
we know that we are sort of like the sort of in between Europe and the West America. This is you're going past our waters
Hmm.
basically. So in Dublin, perfect size ports for bringing in big boats for trade activity. But it wasn't, it was a settlement beforehand, but it was definitely the Vikings then that made it a bigger
Hmm.
settlement, built it into a town, made it much more. But I mean, still 1,200 years ago.
Yeah, a long
I
time
mean,
ago
that city wasn't built overnight.
now.
So
True,
yeah,
yeah.
there's bound to be lots. Well, since I was
So,
talking to you, I thought we did mention last week that we were going to do something about Krampus, and I think you have a few things in that. But I thought before we got to
mm,
Krampus, we'd just cover a wee bit more on the actual history of Christmas. And like Halloween, Christmas wasn't the fun activity for children that it is today. That didn't happen until the 1800s. Before that, St. Nicholas, for a start, hold on till I clean my glasses, I'm sweating you. St. Nicholas was a real person. He was born 300 AD, mid to late third century, and he was from a town called Myra, which was in Asia Minor in modern day Turkey. And he was known, he was obviously like the mayor of his town, or he was a leader in the town anyway, a well known
mm,
character, but with incredible. I mean, according to legend, they sort of credited him with all sorts of magical powers as well as psychic powers. But it started off, he was known as the gift bringer. And there are a few stories as to why he was called the gift bringer. And one of them is that a local man who's had three daughters, the wife must have died, and he had no dowry for the daughters, so he couldn't guarantee them a good marriage,
mm,
which meant there was a good chance that they would have ended up as ladies of the night, according to the folklore. And he didn't know what to do, how he was going to support them, how he was, if you didn't get your daughters married, how were they going to live? How were they going to, they couldn't work, they couldn't support themselves. And apparently, this Nicholas came to this man's house in the middle of the night and left a bag of gold so that there was enough dowry for the three girls and for him to live out his life. And it was because he knew the man was pure of heart, that they were good people. And there's another story, not as nice as that, that's all attributed to Nicholas as well. And there are two versions of it. One where a local innkeeper who was quite nefarious in his activities, abducted three boys. And having a sense that something bad had happened, he arrived at this inn and saved the three boys. But the other story is that he had a sense that he arrived at this inn and the three boys weren't alive. They were actually murdered and dismembered and in pickled jars down in his basement.
mm.
And according to folklore, that Nicholas went in and smited the man, killed him obviously, and resurrected the three boys and became known not just the gift giver, but the giver of life. That now is a heck of a stretch, but he was known as a gift giver, but he wasn't this big jolly Santa Claus character that we have now.
Mm,
He was known as a fair but stern man. If you did wrong, you were punished
mhm,
appropriately for the time. And it was, if he came to your house and left a gift, it was because you were pure of heart and your family had done this, that, and the next thing. But he also, for houses where children were wanton or lazy or bold, he landed at the house with a birch, and the parents were to whip the children into shape, basically. So you didn't want to see a birch landing outside your door. You wanted
mhm,
a bag of, fruit or something, but you didn't want a birch. Now, there's all sorts of all sorts of things that were attributed to him when he was alive. I'm sure an awful lot of it is exaggerated,
mhm.
but he did die on the 6th of December, and being known as the gift giver. And he had he was well known going into the Germanic countries, across into, like, Prussia would have been a much bigger
Mm,
thing at the time. What a much bigger country at the time, because it would have had a few different places in it. But he was known as the gift giver. So to celebrate the 6th of December, which we do now, that's when you technically put your Christmas decorations up. So people would give gifts to each other in the town on the 6th of December to remember
mhm,
Nicholas. Now, it came back over into the Germanic thing. They kind of stuck with the birch thing. And I know that's where Krampus comes in, but it was like, you didn't want to get the birch at your door. You wanted fruit at your door or something substantial at your
mhm,
door. But it became a custom, a tradition. So it kind of moved from Turkey over into Europe. In the 1700s, pioneers and immigrants took the tradition to America. And it was in Europe, St. Nicholas had a sleigh and one reindeer, just the one reindeer.
Just
and
one.
that was only when he moved to the Germanic countries and up to, like, the North European countries. But when they went to, it's an actual man, I can't think of his name, I'd need to look this up again, I'm terrible for details like that. But it was in America that this guy decided to monopolize the gift giver. Sorry, I've skipped a big part there. Where they brought it up to the 25th of December. It was in Constantine's time, and he is the one that decided. Now, they knew that Jesus, along with a lot of other births, had been registered early January. That doesn't mean that's when they were born, it was when they were registered. So they'd come to the conclusion he was born sometime around the end of December, mid to the end of December. So it was the Catholic Church that decided that it was a pagan holiday celebrating the end of the new year and welcoming the new year in. But he decided that would be the time that would celebrate Jesus's birthday. But it wasn't until the 1800s that Christmas became part of that. And it was because they decided, when he had been canonized as St. Nicholas, instead of the gift bringing being on the 6th of December, they decided to bring it forward and for it to be a thing for the 25th of December, for to celebrate. If you're going to give gifts, instead of giving them for St. Nicholas,
it's
St.
for
Nicholas
Jesus.
For Jesus, yeah. So that didn't sort of come around until centuries later. And again, it was still something that was monopolized on when it went to the New World, to America, where it was through advertising and promoting.
Coca-Cola.
And it was literally two different men. I can't think of their names at the moment. I'm terrible for names. That there was one who was an artist, and he'd done this picture of this jolly big man, and then it would have been green and white because that would have been the colors. And but with a sleigh with one reindeer just didn't look good enough, so put the whole 8 on. Within maybe 20 years, another maybe toy company or shop, do you know what, we're going to build on that. And that was in the early 1800s. The Germans and the Finns, etc., that tradition then came back from America to Europe. And again, but the Germans and the Finns, the North Europeans, etc., kept the tradition of Krampus as well. Now, Krampus was after St. Nicholas, but it was the same idea. It was a sort of a Grimm's fairy tale thing. If you done wrong, you didn't want to see this guy coming, you were in for trouble. I mean, there wasn't, as I say, the fun experience that we have now today. But yeah, so they then it grew from there. The Germans then introduced the Christmas tree, putting candles on Christmas tree, the lights. So that was very much a Germanic tradition, but it was coming down from St. Nicholas, who was a Asian Turkish man, and that spread into Europe, over to America, came back to us in the late 1800s, and then it was really it was actually Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's husband, that brought it then to England. And for the first time in his first year of marriage in Buckingham Palace, he had Christmas trees put up.
He was German, right?
Yeah, he was German, had Christmas trees put up. That was something that had never been done before. And I think that was the first year that they started doing Christmas cards to honor Albert. But as a result, that kind of, because the royals were doing it, everybody wanted to do it. And it's like anything, it spread.
Yeah.
And then down the years, I mean, really, it's the Americans that have given us the big jolly red and white Santa that we have now. Because they changed the color back in the 30s or 40s and decided
Coca-Cola, I believe,
I think it was, 100%.
Responsible for the color change anyway.
Yeah, but they're the ones that gave us this big jolly guy, not this scary guy coming with maybe a birch or an apple for you. It was
a stick,
it was never to do with Jesus until the church decided they would amalgamate both holidays, put them all into this, which was originally a pagan holiday, and we'll celebrate the death of St. Nicholas as a gift bringer by giving gifts to each other. But we'll do it in such a way that we're celebrating the birth of Jesus as well, even though there's no concrete evidence that he was born on the 25th of December. But we know that,
Well, I just tell you, it's just interesting because this kind of crosses over with some of the things I read today about Krampus.
Yeah.
So the origins of Krampus are unknown, apparently, and
Well,
the exact
I think
origins.
I know it's from
So
that early story.
it is. It's pre-Christian, but they don't have a definitive lineage, I suppose. So there's two. It's from Alpine regions. So that's Austria, Germany, northern France, northern Italy, Czech Republic, Hungary, um, and
Finland, Denmark,
yeah.
Norway.
Uh, so it's the reason why they say that the origins are pagan is because of Yule. And the pagans had horned gods as well. So the imagery of the Krampus kind of is pagan imagery. And as you said, and the word Krampen in Old German means claw. So it's Krampus, Krampen. So then as you said, when the Christians were taking over the festivities at that time, it's allegedly it is remnants of the pagan holiday, and actually people wore in Germany and Austria wore masks. So there was like a pagan god, sort of fairy god, and it was called Perkta, P E or Perkta, and Perkta was both good and bad, sort of like Santa Claus giving a present or coal.
Yeah,
Perkta,
it's a necklace.
kind of,
You would
yeah.
have got,
It
you
was
were
the
terrified with them.
pre-pagan,
Yeah.
and there were many Perkton, they called them. There were a lot of them. There weren't just the one. But basically, the story goes during the 12 days of Christmas, or the feast of the Epiphany, um, this Perkta fairy comes and will gift you a silver coin, um, if you've been good. But if you've been bad, they cut your stomach open and stuff you with straw and mud and gravel, and then and sew you back up. So
See, it's like I said, it's more like, it reads more like a Grimm's
yeah,
horror story. And the
exactly.
Grimm's
Well,
fairy tales were never,
the
yeah.
church outright banned the Perkton celebration in history, and this was before the 16th century. But so where the story of Krampus that we sort of hear is just the leftovers that, like,
Yeah, see, I don't think the church acknowledged Krampus. I think that was something,
no,
no, we
but
don't accept it, we're
they
not having it.
banned the origin of Krampus,
Yeah,
which
because
was
that
a
was a pagan,
celebration. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So,
And that would
but
have been part of the end of the old year and part of the new year coming in.
yeah,
But yeah, the
and the
church never.
Krampuses, or the Perktons, or these kind of evil spirits, are they're meant to be it. It went from being its own thing as a Perkton to becoming a Krampus, which is sort of a servant of Saint Nick, the kind of bad. Um, they're a separate
Yeah, see,
entity.
but I think from what I could gather when I was reading it, I think Krampus was in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know that because they feared, I think they've sort of married a lot of the legends of St.
Yeah.
Nicholas with European pagan. I think they've married it, but it was the Europeans that kept Krampus. The Americans didn't.
Mm-hmm.
The church didn't, but a lot of the, as you say, the Northern Europeans did.
Yeah. So it's like definitely more to look at in the
Oh my
Krampus
God.
story. I'd be quite
Yeah.
interested to see, or even to lay out which countries have what version still. That might be a cool thing to look at.
It's definitely something we have to do a lot more on, especially now that the time of year it is. And
This month.
thankfully it's much more of a jolly, and because let's face it, not everyone would be, the way they're saying it is, it's if you were true of heart and good natured and you lived well, etc., then you would be rewarded.
Mm.
And if you weren't, then you wouldn't just be not rewarded, you would be punished.
Punished, yeah.
Seriously punished. So that whenever it became part of the Christian celebration, when they made the pagan, that was most of those pagan celebrations were turned into Christian celebrations because of events that happened around the same time when people would be gathered then. But whenever the church took this on, as I say, they amalgamated this lovely story of St. Nicholas, this old man that, but I mean, it is a bit darker. He's supposed to have murdered somebody because they murdered children, and, you know, he brought them back. I don't know. We don't know how much of it.
There seems to
Most
be a
things
lot of hearsay going on.
absolutely. Haunted hearsay.
Yeah.
But it's sort of they're all based on some sort of truth. And we have traditions now that we can see where they came from. But the likes of Krampus, like you're saying in Europe, they're pagan and fairy traditions that, we thankfully we weren't terrified with them. Sure, we had Halloween, for God's sakes. Halloween, where children were being sacrificed, etc. Like, you know, so at least that. But yeah, we definitely have to look a lot more into this. It's so interesting.
Definitely. Brilliant. So what's on our agenda next, I suppose?
Right. Well, do you know something? I'm going back out this week to Ballincool. I'm loving Ballincool at the moment. Can't get enough of it. Want to find out if the whole estate is haunted. So I'm going back out to do that this week.
You've someone you can ask there that you don't know, but they're going to be anonymous. But there's somebody out there that you might be able. They might not be.
Yeah, but maybe they'll speak to me. Maybe they'll.
I'm sure they will talk to you, even if they won't be recorded.
I know. I find when people, you say to people, you know, do you mind if I record you? They're a bit, oh, I don't know. Most people, you know, are like, oh, I don't know. So we'll see how that goes. I'm definitely coming back with more on that. Definitely coming back with more Krampus and the origin of Christmas. Because it is.
I'll definitely have a Christmas story for you next time as well. Just each. Yeah. We'll just do a Christmas story every time for the season that's in it.
And the night before Christmas, that famous poem, that was an American that wrote that as well. And it became part of the Christmas festivities. But those parts of Christmas and the tree, it was like people took the parts of certain celebrations and said, you know what, we'll do this. But it was to do with advertising, and it made it a much more pleasant time. Whenever Constantine decreed that the 25th of December was the date that was close enough for them, that, you know, so we won't just celebrate this man as a gift bringer, we'll celebrate him at the start of the season of Christmas. But it was very much Christmas, Krampus, they're all very much to do with Asia Minor, Northern Europe. But the Christmas we have today is definitely of Germanic origins and American adversizing. So, you know.
Yeah. Next time I'll have a Coca-Cola. Yeah, there's something very American about the Christmas we celebrate today. Even though they celebrate Thanksgiving more, like with the meal and that kind of thing. The commercial side of it is very much.
Well, you see, theirs is not really a religious ceremony at Christmas.
No,
it's such a multicultural society.
Yeah.
You know, it is really the melting pot of the world. Every person there's a representative from every country in the world living in the world. So theirs was, here it's still a bit more about, you know, the sort of religious holiday.
Going to mass on Christmas Day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the Christmas thing. The December the 6th, I never understood before. My father, God rest his soul, always said, no, you don't put your decorations up before December the 6th. You take them down January 6th because of Epiphanies, you know, little Christmas, as it were.
Yeah.
But now I know why, that we put them up on December the 6th. It's to celebrate St. Nicholas, who was a real living, breathing person. He was, you know, sort of given all these attributes that he may or may not had. We don't know. He might have had. Maybe he was magic. Maybe he was psychic. Maybe he had. But what he did do, he was a fair man, but ruthless if you were in any way, if he thought you were in any way wanting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is a very, you know, there's a dark side to it. And characters like Krampus and, as you say, what was the other one?
Perkta. Perkta.
Yeah, I know that there was more than one, that
Yeah.
there was a few. There was like, you better watch out. But they were all pagan traditions. And because the church kind of put a kibosh and all that stuff whenever it did sort of take over a lot of the actual pagan tradition celebrations, like, like Easter and Christmas and things like that, there was a lot of that information was gone. We don't have the origins because the church didn't want it, it wasn't allowed. And so a lot of it was lost. I would go as far as to say, we know the Vatican's in Rome, the
Yeah.
Vatican's,
The
the
Vatican.
catacombs at the
Oh,
Vatican in
catacomb.
Rome,
Yeah.
the libraries have books that are up to 5,000 years old, handwritten. And I'm quite sure there's probably lots of pagan books in amongst all that as well, that
Yeah.
the church just wouldn't share with us. Whether they will in the future or not, I don't know. But I'd say I'd say there'd be quite a lot. I'd say the church knows more than we do when
Yeah.
it comes to something like that,
The secret history of the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, because it's out there. You find it. I've said it before. You find it by looking like so many different things, and you find the common denominator.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of glad that we don't have Krampus here. As I say, wee Willie Winky was bad enough to put the fear of God in you when I was wee. Now it's elf on a shelf.
Yeah. I'm too old for that
It's like
stuff.
a more modern. I think it's cute. It's funny, and the kids love it. So
Does the
it's
elf come alive and do something?
at night. He's naughty at
Ah.
night.
Okay.
He's
Okay.
keeping an eye on you at night as well. I
Checking up,
suppose, like,
making
so it's
sure.
kind of a
Yeah.
bit like Wee Willie Winky or whoever before that.
He's a
But there's no,
spy for
yeah.
Santa.
But he is, I suppose, and initially those elves were spies for Krampus or
Yeah.
Nicholas.
Yeah.
Their origins are not good, but thank God we've sort of adapted all these things to make it a much more fun. It becomes a time of the year, whether you're Catholic, Protestant, Hindu, Islam, I don't know, whatever religion you are. It's just a time of the year now where people come together and remember and give gifts. But the gift bearing definitely comes from St. Nicholas. The Epiphany and the Christmas holiday on the 25th, that comes from the church. Everything else seems to have definitely, but it is all definitely bedded in
pagan history.
tradition
Yeah. Pagan.
beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. We'll delve much further deep into it. I also want to read a full story from this
Oh, no, you have to.
brilliant book, but the only thing is the stories are very long, so I'm going to record one and put it
Do
up
put them out
separately.
because
Yeah.
it's so worth having, especially at Christmas. Get one out for Christmas. I have a few that I'm going to do, but I might do them with pictures instead.
Yeah.
It's just that I feel like we've got so much to get through with the Christmas one. I mean, we're not ignoring our ghosty stories because all
No.
of these, as I say, have quite dark origins.
Well, these are spooky. So here's some. I don't know if you can see them, but some Christmas ghosts.
Oh yeah, wow.
So I'll do a proper reading from the book before Christmas. Yeah, and I'll put up the pictures properly on the screen.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'm thoroughly enjoying looking up again, and going through the history of things. And the 6th of December one, that was one. Obviously, my father told me when I was a wee girl, I didn't remember. So when I looked, I went, "Oh, that's right, I remember that now." So I mean, it's good because you get a lot of people who go, "Oh, well, he wasn't," they'll nitpick at details, and I think no, it's because nobody knew the exact date of Jesus' birth. They did know when St. Nicholas died. That is recorded. His bones were buried, or his body was buried somewhere in his town of Myra, somewhere in Turkey, but apparently stolen and removed and put somewhere else because they believed they were magic. How much of that is true, I don't know, but I'm going to look more into it.
It's completely off topic. Well, not completely off topic, but did you know that the heart of Saint Valentine is in Dublin City?
No.
Yeah, you can visit it. It's like the actual heart of Saint Valentine.
Wow.
Yeah. So next time you're up, we'll go visit that if you want.
Yeah, definitely. Where is it?
I've seen it before. I'm trying to remember. Is it Christchurch or let me see, Saint Valentine's.
A relic of any sort is always worth a visit. See what kind of
Relic. That's the word
Yeah.
that I was looking for. Yeah, it's in a box in a Dublin church.
I wonder, is it actually preserved, or is it like, an emaciated little thing now? Can you actually see it, or can you just see the box?
Uh, you can just see the box, I believe.
I'm thinking.
I'm trying to
You know
remember.
how
I
the
think
likes of like Padre Pio and things like that, you can still see the
Whitefriar
the
Street
body.
Church. Yeah, Whitefriar Street Church. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, how with other saints, the likes of Padre Pio, etc., you can still see the bodies. They're in glass,
Mm,
and they're completely preserved
hmm.
naturally. That's part of the reasons that they were made saints as well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Creepy, but interesting.
yeah. Anyone that's been made a saint, apparently the body's still completely intact,
I
and it's
s-
nothing to do with mummification. It's that the body
yeah.
has just never deteriorated. It's dried up, but never deteriorated further.
I
That's another
saw.
thing we have to look into as well.
Yeah, or I want to look at stigmata as well.
Mm,
That's a whole thing in itself. But the I saw Ho Chi Minh. Do you know Ho Chi Minh?
yes, I do. Yeah.
I saw him in his mausoleum in Ho in Saigon.
Yeah, that's right. You
Yeah,
traveled all around
yeah.
Vietnam and Far East.
Back in the
I'm
days
very
when,
jealous of that at the time. Who was with you that time?
my friend Helen and
Was it
Dave,
just you? No, there was few of you, wasn't there?
Helen and Dave, just the three of us in Vietnam.
Wow.
And then I went
That was, I
to
remember your pictures when you were sending them back,
mm,
and oh my God, it was such a, I'd love to visit there. I had an
yeah.
uncle, God rest his soul, who was in the American Army. He was a ranger in the American Army, and he served 3 tours out there.
Oh wow,
Now, yeah, I know, in Vietnam,
three.
but three. Yeah, he also served. He served in Germany at the end of the Second World War when the war was over and they were clearing the place out.
Mm,
And he served. He done his whole thing in Korea, and then he done three tours of Vietnam as an officer in the Rangers, which is quite exclusive from what I can gather.
hmm.
But died of natural causes at the age of 42, 6 months after
Oh,
coming back from Vietnam,
that's
but
terrible.
apparently had said that he would love to go back, that it was a beautiful country.
Mm,
And we know that now because I mean we can see it now. We can see pictures of it. Before that, we couldn't. It was closed off to the west, etc. But yeah, since then I've always been
mm.
fascinated with Vietnam and Cambodia, and I've always wanted to go back and visit.
It's
So that's definitely a
definitely
start.
worth a visit, and the people were really nice. And
Yeah.
I I went 13 years ago, so it was a long time ago. But hopefully,
I have to go before I get too old.
yeah. Well, now we'll all be dying for a holiday,
I know, after
soon.
all
So,
this.
but
Listen, thank you
yeah,
very much, Ben. I've enjoyed this as usual. Thank you, everyone, for all your likes recently. We've had lots of likes recently. I really appreciate it. I've also had several messages from people saying they're enjoying the page. Really appreciate you doing that. I had a message from a guy in Devon, actually, Simon. I can't remember his second name. Again, you know me in names.
Mhm.
But he was telling me that apparently Devon per square mile is more haunted than anywhere else in the world.
Cool,
So we're going to have to go in. Apparently, he's got some stuff up in his page. I must go in and have a look,
cool. Let's
and we'll
check it
come back
out.
and we'll talk
Yeah,
about that. Maybe we'll get him on and he can tell us the story, maybe.
tell us
But
something
thank you,
about
everyone.
Devon.
Yeah,
Mm.
thank you, everyone that's taken the time to message me and to tell me you're enjoying it. It's so appreciated. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. We get 1 cent for every like. Isn't it
We
for every like or every
no, we
subscription?
don't really. That's not true.
No.
You get $1 per every 1,000 views, probably around
Really?
that. Yeah. So um,
I don't care. Just tune in
it's not
anyway.
going to make us rich. We're not in it for the
Oh
money.
God, no. I
So
feel like Del Boy, this time next year we'll be millionaires.
well, we'll see.
Well, no, we might be if we're very lucky. Hundred heirs. Right,
And then,
listen, thank you
right,
everyone. And we'll be back again actually on Thursday. So not long to go, and we'll chat to you all then. Goodbye,
yeah.
Ben. Thanks a
See
million.
you.
And
Bye
chat to you
bye.
Thursday. Bye.